Welcome to the Wind Up with Will, everyone. I'm your host, Will, here with another episode, and today we're going to be discussing the college football season. We're about halfway through. We're in what week are we at now? We're in week 8, going into week 8. We've had a lot of games so far. Most teams are halfway through their schedule. Most teams have played 6 games at this point. So I'm just going to go through the rankings and go through each team's season so far, give a brief glimpse at who they've played. It's been a while, so I apologize that I've not done kind of a weekly update. I want to try and do that. I've been bad about that, but we're going to give it a go here and look through the rankings and where teams are ranked currently. So this is looking at the AP's top 25 so far on the season. This is week 8. Coming in at 25, we've got the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and right in front of them at 24 is the Cincinnati Bearcats. Now, a lot of people have said, and I agree with this, that Nebraska should be ranked ahead of Cincinnati because they played on a neutral field and Nebraska won the game. But I mean, their comparable teams are both 5-1. They don't have. I mean, Cincinnati has a better win, having beat Iowa State, who was ranked. But I think the fact that Nebraska beat them head to head, I think you got to put Nebraska ahead of them. At 23, we've got Utah. I think Utah should maybe be a little higher. Their only loss on the year was to Texas Tech. Now, they did get kind of the doors beaten off of them at the end of the game, but the game was a little closer than the score indicates. They've played really well so far. Their only loss is to Texas Tech, who has looked extremely dominant and is a top 10 team. So I think Utah should be a little higher than 23. Coming in at 22, we've got Memphis, who is 6-0, who's one of the top teams in the group of 5, and they look like they're really on a collision course, perhaps with either South Florida or Navy for the American Championship game. It's going to be an interesting group of 5 selection, and it really looks like it's going to come out of whoever the group of 5 team that makes the playoffs is going to come out of the American Conference there. At 21, well, I guess I should go through some of their games. Uh, Memphis is 6-0. They have beaten. They haven't really beaten anyone of consequence. I mean, they beat Chattanooga. It's an FCS school. They beat Georgia State. They beat Troy. They beat Arkansas in a really close game at Memphis, a game that Arkansas literally fumbled away. And then they killed FAU. They destroyed Tulsa this past week. They have an easy schedule until they face South Florida 2 weeks from now. It'll be in Memphis. Then they'll have to take on Tulane at home, and they'll get Navy at home. So they'll get the 3 tougher teams that are competing for the American title. They get all of them at home in South Florida, Tulane, and Navy. So Memphis might be the favorite in all those games. Memphis should maybe be the slight favorite, but I think South Florida has looked a little better, but we'll get to them in a second. Memphis has got a good shot at getting to the American title game, competing for it. Their destiny is in their hands. If they win out and they win the American, I think they're the Group of 5 team in. At 21, we've got Texas at 4-2. Texas has had quite the roller coaster of a season. They started out as the preseason number 1 team. I think, myself included, kind of maybe drunk the Kool-Aid on that of, hey, they're a pretty good team. I know they've had overturned. I know they're replacing a lot of players. But Arch Manning is the real deal. He's a good quarterback. They're going to be good. And Arch Manning has been, I guess, somewhat disappointing, but it's his first time starting. I do think my prediction of him coming back for next year is going to hold true, but I think that's partly because he's just not fully developed. He's just now getting to play and to start regularly, and we're going to continue to see him improve and adapt. I think we're going to see him become a pretty good quarterback, but it's going to take time for him. And Texas is just as they have kind of had an up and down year. They lost at Ohio State to start the season 14-7, close game. Their defense has been really good. They destroy San Jose State 38-7. They take care of UTEP 27-10. They demolish Sam Houston 55-0, but then they go into Gainesville and lose to an unranked Florida team 29-21. Florida has just not been that team this year. I thought that they would be better than they were last year, but they're off to the kind of the same slow start of inconsistent play, of turnovers, and that they're just not. They're not a consistent team. Florida has not been a consistent team, but hey, they're able to beat Texas, and Texas was ranked 9 at the time. Beat Texas losing that game made them unranked. But then they went into Dallas to face their rival Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry game, or Red River shootout game is the correct name of that rivalry. Oklahoma was the number 6 team in the nation, and Texas was unranked. Texas took care of business there, 23-6. I kind of thought they would have a bounce back and at least play Oklahoma close. Those rivalry games, you can never tell. But they take care of business to beat Oklahoma and get back in the rankings. They get back up to 21. I think this is maybe somewhat understandable, them being at 21. I think their defense is pretty good. Their offense has not shown a whole lot against good teams. Florida is maybe better than their record says that they are, but Florida's just an inconsistent team, and that's going to, at the end of the season, the committee's going to look at that and say that that's a bad loss, unless Florida just improves out the rest of the year and maybe ends up as a 9-3 or 8-4 team. I don't know how you can't look at that and say that's kind of a bad loss for Texas. But Texas's destiny is still in their hands. They play at UK, they play at Mississippi State, they get Vanderbilt at home, and then their last 2 of their last 3 games are they're going to be at Georgia. They're going to get Arkansas at home, which should be a win, and then they'll get A&M at home, who looks like one of the best teams in the country. So their destiny is in their hands. If Texas can win out, they've got a good shot at being in the SEC title game probably. So they still have destiny in their own hands, but at Georgia and A&M at home to end the season, those are going to be 2 tough games, and they're going to need to win both of them to stay in the playoff. One more loss, I think they're out of the playoffs unless they somehow still end up in the SEC title game. But 21 is maybe an accurate ranking, somewhat of an accurate ranking for them. They're kind of inconsistent on offense, and Florida's a bad loss. But beating Oklahoma, who's the number 16 in the nation, is a good win for them. Sorry, I spent a lot of time talking about them. At number 20, we've got the USC Trojans, 5-1. They just come off beating Michigan, 31-13. That's a huge win for them. It was in Southern California. They dominated that game. They ran all over Michigan with a walk-on running back, so that's huge. And they really needed that win coming off a loss at Illinois, a 32-34 loss at Illinois. And Illinois is a good team. Illinois probably should be ranked. I don't see why Illinois isn't ranked. Their only 2 losses are to the number 1 and number 3 team in the country. Now, they got the brakes beat off of them by Indiana, who's the number 3 team in the country. But I think Illinois should be ranked, and that shouldn't be that horrible of a loss. And it's their only loss in the season so far. Beating Michigan is huge. It gets them ranked. It gets USC up to number 20, and they face my Notre Dame Fighting Irish this next weekend, who's number 13. So that's going to be a huge game and have playoff implications on the line. If USC can win that game, I think they move up to probably 12 or 13, and they're looking at being a playoff team at that point. If they can win out, they're going to be in the playoffs. If Notre Dame wins that game, I think that puts Notre Dame's at 13 right now. It's a little bit of spoiler ahead for the rest of the AP poll, but that would put Notre Dame, I think, in the driver's seat for the playoffs. That's going to be their signature win. It gets them in, and it moves them up. It'll knock USC probably out of the top 25, which I think is a little unfair to them, well, maybe it should. I don't know. That's getting into hypotheticals. But if Notre Dame wins against USC, I think that puts them in the driver's seat to the playoffs. If USC beats Notre Dame, it puts them in the driver's seat to the playoffs. There's a huge implication game coming this next weekend. At number 19, we've got South Florida at 5-1. Their only loss is to Miami, who's the number 2 team in the nation. That you can't blame them for that. But they had a very signature win at Florida to start the year. They had a great start to the season. They destroyed Boise State, a playoff team from last year, 34-7. Then they go into Gainesville and beat Florida 18-16. They lose, unfortunately, to Miami, but they've taken care of business ever since then and destroyed their opponents. They're really in the driver's seat here because the only two teams of consequence that they're going to face the rest of the season is at Memphis and at Navy. Those are going to be two good games for them. If they win those, they're in the driver's seat to the playoffs. They just need to win the American Championship at that point. North Texas is also a good win for them that shouldn't be overlooked. North Texas is 5-1. That's their first loss on the year. They went to North Texas, a good Sun Belt program, and beat them 63-36. So South Florida is really looking like they're the favorite to win the American right now and be the group of 5 team in the playoffs. They look really solid. At number 18 is the Virginia Cavaliers at 5-1. They have got a signature win over Florida State. Now, as time goes on, that win is going to look less impressive because Florida State, even though they started 3-0 on the year, they had that great win against Alabama. They have fallen to 0-3 in conference play. They're 3-3 on the year now. So it's going to look less and less of a good win for Virginia. But at the time, Florida State was ranked 8th in the nation, and Virginia fans stormed the field. That was a very chaotic field storming. But Virginia also has a signature win over Louisville in overtime. And look, Louisville is a good football program. You might not hear it talked about. They might not be in the top 25, but Louisville is a pretty good football program. On the year, they are 4-1. They were off this past week. They're pretty good. Jeff Brom has been a good head coach for them there and has really turned the program back into a pretty good contender. They played well last year. 2 years ago, they made the ACC title game. Louisville is a team that should not be overlooked, and I would not be surprised if they end up in the top 25 by the end of the year, or perhaps even get into the ACC conference championship game conversation. They only have one loss on the year, and I think that they're a good team, and that's going to end. That might end up being a more signature win for Virginia than Florida State by the end of the year. But at 18, at 5-1, Virginia is probably somewhat accurately ranked there. Vanderbilt at 17, they're 5-1 on the year. They have a signature win in South Carolina. Now, South Carolina is not the same team as they were last year, but they demolished them 31-7. They took care of business there. They got revenge over Georgia State this year, who they lost to last year. They beat them 70-21. They beat Virginia Tech, who has got off to a bad start but has been playing better. They beat them early in the season. They played Alabama close for most of the game until Alabama pulled away late. They lost to Alabama 30-14. So they're 1-1 in the SEC play. 17, I've heard some people say it's too low for them, but we really don't know a ton about them because their only really good opponent they faced so far is Alabama. I guess you could say South Carolina, but South Carolina is down this year. They're not the same team as they were last year. I think what is South Carolina's record on the year? South Carolina is 3-3 overall and 1-3 in conference play. They're not the same team as they were last year, and even though that's still a great win for Vanderbilt, I don't know if you can necessarily say that they were really that it's that good of a team that they faced this year. That is their signature win so far on the season. But playing Alabama, they lost. They played them well. But we're going to see who Vanderbilt really is over the coming weeks. They get number 10 LSU at home. They get Missouri at home. They go to Texas. They get Auburn at home. They get UK at home, and they end the season going to Tennessee. The only two games on this schedule the rest of the way that look easy to me that should be wins for them is Auburn at home and UK at home. UK looks like they're the worst team in the conference this season, so that should be an easy win for Vanderbilt. But the rest of their schedule is going to be tough. We're going to see who they really are. We're going to see whether they are the same team as they were last year, where they went 7-5, and hey, it's a good year for Vanderbilt football. It's good for them. Or are they going to take that next step like Indiana has? At number 16, we've got the Missouri Tigers. They're 5-1 on the year. Their only blemish was to Alabama this past weekend, same as Vanderbilt. They lose 27-24 in a tight game to them. They drop from 14 to 16. I honestly think this is a little low for them. Missouri's looked pretty good on the season. They got wins over their old rival Kansas. They got a win over South Carolina. So maybe it is a little accurate to have them here. I think they're similar to Vanderbilt, but a little better. They've been tested by another decent program in Kansas. Kansas is not the same program from 10 years ago. They're been a much better program over the last few years. So that is a good win for Missouri, even if it's not a top 25 team. But having them at 16, they might be accurately ranked there. But I think they're going to be a better team than that as the season goes along. BYU's at 15. They're 6-0. I think this is too low for them. They're a really good program. They got a signature win in Arizona this past week. They beat West Virginia. They went into Colorado and won. I think they're a good program. And really, College Game Day should be going to Provo this next weekend instead of I think it's Georgia Ole Miss is going to be that'll be a good game too. Those are two highly ranked teams. But BYU Utah is one of the most underrated rivalries in the country. It's called the Holy War, which is such a cool name. That is going to be going on this next weekend is Utah and BYU. Huge rivalry there between the number 23rd team in the nation, the number 15 team in the nation. I think BYU should be ranked higher than 15, but if they beat Utah, I think they'll move up. Can definitely be in that conversation for the Big 12 title game. Now, that will get decided. Texas Tech is the other Big 12 title kind of team in the odds to favorite to win the Big 12. And they do play each other in a couple of weekends at Texas Tech. So that could perhaps be a preview for the Big 12 title game, or it could knock one of those teams out of contention for the Big 12 title game. Number 14, we've got Oklahoma. They dropped 8 spots after losing to Texas, and honestly, I think that they should. They did not look good in this game. Now, John Mateer was coming off a hand injury. He had, I think, a broken thumb, and it's trying to heal. I think that affects them somewhat. I mean, they did not look good in the game, but you also have to say that their quarterback is coming off an injury, but he's also their quarterback. He is part of the team. They didn't play well with him coming off the injury. And they lost to Texas, who was unranked at the time. So I think dropping 8 spots probably is what should happen for them. They probably should drop about that far. Number 13, we've got my Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They have had quite the up and down season as well. Got off to I guess I should mention also Oklahoma beat Michigan, which is a signature win for them, 24-13 earlier in the season. Then they beat Auburn in a close game. But we're going to see they've got somewhat a tough schedule to finish with at South Carolina, Ole Miss at home, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri at home, and LSU at home. So they have a tough schedule to finish out. We'll see where they end up. But I think they're probably should be the 14th team in the nation. They got a good win over Michigan. They got a good win over Auburn. And if John Mateer is healthy, I think they play Texas a lot closer in that game. But Texas really stifled them, so I think they're worthy of being about 14. They should probably drop to there from number 6. Number 13 is my Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I was actually blessed to get to go watch them play, not this weekend, but last weekend in Boise State. What a great venue, what a great campus. It was awesome to get to go there with my dad and watch the game. We got to walk around and see the campus, and beautiful, beautiful campus, beautiful stadium. It was my not only first Notre Dame game, but my first FBS game. I've only ever seen my alma mater, Murray State, play at the FCS level. So it was really cool getting to go to a big college football stadium with a ton of tradition and history and all the pageantry and traditions that went into that. So that was really cool. And it was very fun. It was a great game, and Notre Dame scared me a little bit when late in the first half, Boise State took the lead to go ahead 7-6 after Notre Dame had missed an extra point again. But Notre Dame took care of business the rest of the way and ended up winning 28-7. It was very loud in that stadium, and it was a great game. And Notre Dame has been they have been much improved from where they were to start the season. And I'm going to get into what their season has been like. They lost at Miami 27-24 on a last-minute field goal. They lose 41-40 on a last-minute touchdown by Texas A&M, and by a missed extra point by Notre Dame. If they make the extra point, and this game's going to overtime. So they lose to two of the top 10 teams in the country. What are two of the top 10 teams in the country right now by a combined 4 points. And the 4 games since then, Notre Dame has dominated their opponents. They beat Purdue 56-30. They go into Arkansas and destroy them 56-13. They score 42 points in the first half in that game, which is the most points scored in a half against an SEC team by a non-SEC team in the last 30 years. Now you might say, well, Will, Arkansas is not that good. Yeah, but did you hear what I said? It's the first non-SEC team to score 42 points in the first half against an SEC team in the last 30 years. That's counting Vanderbilt. That's counting UK. That's counting Mississippi State, has had some moments down in that time. It's counting Auburn. None of those teams have done that. None of those teams have given that up. As bad as Vanderbilt has been for a long time, they've not given that up in that span. And I'm not saying that Arkansas is a bad team or a bad program. They're a very proud program. And that's my point, is that Notre Dame is just really, really good. To go into Arkansas, which has a huge, proud football tradition and a very hostile environment to go into, and Notre Dame just demolished them. It took care of business at home. The game I got to go to, 28-7 over Boise State, who's the Group of 5 team in the playoffs last year. They take care of NC State 36-7 this past weekend. And the whole time Notre Dame managed to stay in the top 25 by those 2 quality losses at the beginning of the season. They dropped from the number 16 to number 8, then to 24. After beating Purdue, moved up to 22. After beating Arkansas, moved up to 21. Then after beating Boise, moved up to 16. After beating NC State, they're now up to 13 in the nation. I think this is an accurate ranking. Some people are going to say it's a little too much, but they lost to 2 of the top 10 teams by 4 points combined on a last-minute field goal, and by essentially a missed extra point in the game of A&M, and that happened within the last minute, or last couple of minutes. And they've taken care of business ever since then. Their defense has come back. Their defense didn't look good the first 2 games, but they've come back and been really good the last few games, created a ton of turnovers, had a lot of sacks, and they've just stifled the team's offenses. They've gotten better as the games have gone along, and the offense looks as good as about any offense in the country, with probably the best running back duo in the country, and Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And C.J. Carr is playing well as any quarterback in the country. Notre Dame is a dangerous team, and I think they're going to end up back in the playoffs. And they play USC this coming weekend, who's number 20. I think that is Notre Dame's signature win. People are saying, who have they beat? Who have they beat? Who have they beat? Well, USC is going to be that signature win this weekend, a top 20 team, and get Notre Dame into the driver's seat in the playoffs. If Notre Dame wins out at that point, they're in the playoffs. They don't have a conference championship game because they're independent. So Notre Dame just needs to take care of business and win out. I think they're in the playoffs. I think there's going to be enough chaos happen around them for them to get in. Like I said, like I mentioned earlier, Texas lost to Florida and fell out of the top 25. Now they're back in now, but they're behind Notre Dame. Penn State has just been a star that has collapsed in on itself. After losing to Oregon in overtime, they go into UCLA and lose. And UCLA was so bad of a program at the moment that there weren't even enough fans there to storm the field after beating a top 10 team in the country. There weren't enough fans to storm the field. Horrible loss. And you're going, well, Penn State's season is they really need to wake up if they want to save the season. And then they lose to Northwestern this past weekend. I think it was 22-21. And just yesterday they announced they were firing James Franklin, which I think is a huge, huge decision. I might talk a little bit more about that in another video. But Penn State is 3-3 on the year and without their head coach, and just crazy chaos that has happened. Nothing like college football, man. But if there continues to be chaos in front of Notre Dame, which I think there will, a lot of the SEC teams that are ranked ahead of them play one another, or play other good teams in the SEC. So you're going to have teams lose, and it's going to do nothing but help programs like Notre Dame and BYU continue to move up in the rankings. Of course, it really matters what the College Football Playoff Committee does, but I think Notre Dame, if they win out, will get in. Number 12 is Georgia Tech. They're 6-0. Their signature win on the year is Clemson. which doesn't look as good now. No, Clemson was number 12 and they beat them by a last-second field goal, 24-21. But and Georgia Tech probably should not have beat Wake Forest. They beat them on a missed call. But they're a good team. They were a good team last year, and they look even better this year. They've got a really good chance to be playing in the ACC title game, and I think if they're playing in the ACC title game, I think they get into the playoffs. It's kind of like SMU did last year. Of hey, you have this good of a record, you're in the top 12, you lose the ACC title game, we're not going to kick you out of the top 12. I think that that's likely what is going to happen because they avoid Miami, they avoid Florida State, who is looking like less of a juggernaut now. Um, also, they don't play Louisville, they don't play SMU. I don't think they play Pitt, do they? They do play Pitt. They do play Pitt and they do play Duke, who are also two good teams in the program. But they play Duke. They play at Duke. They get Syracuse at home, at NC State, at Boston College, Pitt at home, and then they're going to have, I believe, their non-conference rivalry game against Georgia. I think is in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, if I'm right. Yeah, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That really should be played at Bobby Dodd, but that's a topic for another video. If they can go undefeated in the ACC and be playing an ACC title game when they play Georgia, I think they're in the playoffs because even if they lose, unless they just get demolished by Georgia and get demolished in the ACC title game, I think they're in the playoffs. If they play Georgia anything like they did last year and then play well in the ACC title game, even if they lose, they're in with those two losses. They'll have a undefeated regular season in the ACC, a close loss to Georgia, and a close loss in the ACC title game. I think that gets them in. Or if they could just beat Georgia and win the ACC title game, or they do one of those. They beat Georgia, lose the ACC title game, or they lose to Georgia, win the ACC title game. But easily, if they just win the ACC title game, they're in as the automatic bid for the ACC. But they have an easy path ahead of them outside of Georgia. So they've got a real good chance to at least get to the ACC title game. Number 11, we've got Tennessee at 5-1. Their only blemish on the year is losing to Georgia in overtime. It was a good team. So Tennessee is going to be there. I think that's probably accurate for them. They play Alabama this next weekend. LSU is number 10 at 5-1. They have signature wins over South Carolina, Florida, and they had a signature win over Clemson to start the year as the number 4 team in the nation at the point. It was at Clemson, 17-10. As time goes along, that looks like less and less of a signature win because Clemson has not been that good. Clemson's done better the last few weeks, but they're not really playing tough teams. Time is going to tell. Their one loss in the year is to Ole Miss, at Ole Miss in a close game. They're going to have ranked teams ahead at Vanderbilt, A&M at home, at Alabama, and at Oklahoma to end the season. So we're going to see who LSU is. I still think they're a good team. Their defense is really good. Their offense has got to get it figured out. They've got to be able to score more than 17 or 20 or 24 points a game. They've got to score more. If they can get in the range of scoring close to 30 a game, this is a team that's contending for the SEC title game. At number 9 is Georgia at 5-1. Their only blemish on the year is losing to Alabama again. This is the hurdle that they struggle with. I know they've gotten over it a couple times to win a couple national championships, but Alabama is just a thorn in their side, and this is the new and really good rivalry in the SEC right now is Georgia-Alabama, just because they're facing the SEC title game a lot. They're competing in national championship games. This is a huge rivalry, and they just lose by 3. I thought they would win this game, and I really thought they would, but that's their only blemish on the year. We're going to see them, I think, likely make the playoff at number 9. Number 8 is Oregon at 5-1. They dropped 5 spots this past week after losing to Indiana. That's their first loss on the year. But Indiana beat them 30-20 at Oregon, and Oregon's signature win on the year was against Penn State in overtime, who has just imploded. So at the moment, Oregon doesn't have a great. I guess at the time you can say Penn State. At the time, that looked like a signature win. That's a ranked win for them. They go into a hostile environment, Penn State. I think they should still get credit for that. But as time goes on, that's going to look less of a win. And losing to Indiana at home, I don't think they should get punished too much. Indiana's really good. So, but they dropped 5 spots. I think that's a little much for them, but it's not too bad. I maybe have them at 6 or 7 there. At 7, we've got Texas Tech at 6-0, undefeated in the Big 12. They've taken care of business. They've gone into Utah and beat Utah. They went into Houston, who's undefeated, and beat them. They beat Kansas at home. They looked really good. They spent a ton of, as much or more NIL money than anyone this past offseason, and it's really paying off for them. They're really good. I think they not only should be the favorites to win the Big 12, I think they probably will win the Big 12. So having them at 7 is a good. I think that's probably pretty accurate for them. At 6, we have Alabama, who's 5-1. I'm going to admit I was wrong on Alabama. I picked them to miss the playoffs for the second year in a row. I picked them to miss the playoffs last year, was correct on that, and was like, well, my kind of spicy take for this year is that they'll do it again. And my thought was, Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. He's a good head coach, but he's not Nick Saban. Those are big shoes to fill. Stepping into the greatest coach of all time's shoes at his university. Those are big shoes to fill, and I did not think that they would be this good this fast, especially after last year going 9-3. They looked inconsistent at times, and starting this year with their loss to Florida State, I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly not only what I thought would happen, but as my biases indicate, what I would like to happen. I'm not a huge Alabama fan. I would not mind seeing them miss the playoffs again. But I was totally wrong on making that prediction. They look like one of the best teams in the country. They have been phenomenal ever since getting pretty much controlled in that game against Florida State. They lost 31-17. They've taken care of business going into Georgia and winning against Vanderbilt at home in a close game. And it's a good Vanderbilt program. They go into Missouri and take care of business. They have looked like a really good team. Now, can they beat Tennessee this year in Tuscaloosa in Alabama? That is going to be their real test. That is their big game. Auburn at the end of the year is, it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen in those games, but they ought to be able to beat Auburn. This is a really good Alabama team. Their quarterback is playing like a Heisman candidate in Ty Simpson. 6 is probably accurate for them. Number 5 is Ole Miss, who's 6-0. I think Ole Miss is overrated. This is a little too high for me for them, mostly because they haven't played great. They played Georgia State to start the year, a lower or a Sun Belt. Georgia State's in the Sun Belt. They beat them 63-7. Okay, you would kind of expect that. Then they play Kentucky at Kentucky and barely win 30-23. And Kentucky looks horrible this year, especially on offense. They have no offense. And Ole Miss nearly loses to them. But Kentucky, for some reason, has been Ole Miss's kryptonite the last few years. I don't know why. I guess it's a trap game where they just expect to win and Kentucky surprises them. They struggle against Arkansas, beating them 41-35. The same Arkansas team that the very next week, Notre Dame, or it might have been 2 weeks. It might have been 2 weeks after that. It was in that stretch. Notre Dame beat Arkansas. I think it might have been the next week. Notre Dame beat Arkansas 56-13. Ole Miss was struggling to stop them. They take care of beating Tulane. They barely beat LSU, whose only signature win is over a bad Clemson team. But LSU, I think, is a good team. So that is a signature win, and that's a top 4 opponent. That's a great win for Ole Miss. That's something they can hang their hat on. Hey, we're good. We're still undefeated. But they struggled against Washington State, who is not that good of a team. Washington State's 3-3 on the year, and they're playing in the Pac-2. Them and Oregon State are what's left of the Pac-12, and they're just playing a hodgepodge of Mountain West teams and schedules that they could put together. They barely beat them. They beat them 24-21. I think having Ole Miss at 5 is too high. I think they ought to be closer, probably about 8 would maybe be accurate. They're undefeated, but they've not looked overly impressive in those wins outside of LSU. It's a good win, but LSU's offense has not done much so far in the season. They've been a little underwhelming. So I think 5 is a little high for Ole Miss, but they are a really good team, and they are worthy of being top 10, being undefeated. Number 4, we got Texas A&M at 6-0. They have looked really good, going into Notre Dame and winning, getting revenge from last year. Now, they had the missed extra point by Notre Dame, which gave them the win. There's also a missed holding call in that game on the touchdown pass that should have been called that probably would have ended up giving the game to Notre Dame. But suffice to say, they ended up pulling out a win. They get a tough win against Auburn, who's not that great. They get a good win against Mississippi State, a good win against Florida. Their defense is really good. Their offense has looked pretty good at times. They have weapons. They're really skilled. Mike Elko has put together a good team. This is the year where Texas A&M is finally going to go to the SEC title game and finally arrive. They have arrived. They're a top 4 team. They look great. At number 3, we've got the Indiana Hoosiers. This is exactly where everyone had them when the year started. I was wrong on Indiana as well. I thought that they were still a good program. I thought that they were a good program last year and deserved to make the playoffs. I did not think they would be a playoff team this year. I thought they would maybe be in the conversation. I had them going 9-3. I think I mentioned that in my preseason video. They were one of the teams I mentioned if they're not going to make the playoffs, but they're going to have a good season. I had them going 9-3. I had them losing, I think, at Oregon, at Penn State, and what was the other game I had them I had them losing to someone else too along the way. Maybe at Iowa. I had them losing 3 games. I said they would beat Illinois though. Having that game at home, I figured they would maybe edge out a win, but they dominated Illinois in that game, 63-10. They took care. They got some heat for. I think they canceled their game against Virginia this year and picked up games against. I think Kennesaw State was the other team. They played Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. 2 FBS teams and an FCS team in Indiana State. They took care of business against those teams and then destroyed Illinois. They go into Iowa and win a close game. They go into Oregon and dominate Oregon. Maybe not dominate them, but they win a 30-20 game against Oregon. Great performance by them. Jumps them up from 7 in the nation to number 3 at 6-0. They look like they are perhaps the best team. They beat Illinois more than Ohio State did. Now, Ohio State went to Illinois where Illinois went to Indiana. So that's perhaps a little bit of the difference there. But Indiana has looked phenomenal. Curt Cignetti has built a winning culture, a winning program there, and they look like they are the team, or one of the teams, to come out of the Big Ten. They're one of the best teams in the country. I think they're going to be playing in the Big Ten title game after that win over Oregon. They just got to take care of business the rest of the way. I don't think they have too many tough games after that Oregon game. They get Michigan State at home. They'll get UCLA at home, which has been playing much better after they upset Penn State. They'll go to Maryland, which has been good this year, so that could be a little bit of a trap game. They go to Penn State, who, as I said earlier, has fully imploded. They should be able to win that, you would think, at this point. They get Wisconsin home, who's done nothing, and then they go to Purdue to end the season in their big in-state rival. I think Indiana is going to be playing the Big Ten title game. They look great. Curt Cignetti has built a great team. Fernando Mendoza, their quarterback, looks phenomenal. With their win at Oregon, I think they're well into the driver's seat to be playing that Big Ten title game. They're one of the best teams in the nation, and they're going to be a playoff team again this year and prove me and many people wrong who did not pick them to make the playoffs. Number 2, we have Miami, who's 5-0. They've got signature wins against Notre Dame, over South Florida, who's looking like they will probably be the Group of 5 team, and they destroyed them. They beat their in-state Florida rival Florida 26-7. They beat their big, huge rival Florida State at Florida State 28-22. They are in the driver's seat. They will have Louisville at home, which I think could be a good opponent for them. Louisville's an underrated football team. They'll go to at SMU, who's going to be good. And they'll end the year with games with North Carolina State at home and at Pitt. Those are 2 decent programs as well, but I think they ought to win them. Miami is one of the best teams in the country. They've looked phenomenal. Carson Beck is playing at a Heisman level ability. Like, he looked washed last year at Georgia, but he's completely turned it around. Miami has looked amazing. They deserve to be the number 2 team. And there's an argument to be had that they should be the number 1 team in the nation. They have played and had more significant wins over teams than Ohio State arguably has, but I'm getting to them. Ohio State is your number 1 team in the nation. They've got signature wins over Texas, 14-7 to start the year. But as time's gone along, that looks like less of a great win. Texas has not been as good as people thought they would be. But still, at the time, they were the number one team. It was a good win, two huge football programs. So I'd still say it's a signature win for them. They go into Washington, who is really underrated and really should be in the top 25 at 5-1. Their only loss in the year is to Ohio State, who beat them 24-6 at Washington. They go into Illinois and take care of business 34-16. That game was not even really that close from the start of the second half onward. It was not a close game at that point. But they've played Grambling State, Ohio, and Minnesota as well. They took care of business against those teams. I shouldn't say Ohio State hasn't played anyone. They have played good teams in Texas, at Washington, at Illinois. Those are all signature and good wins. But those are not the same caliber of teams, arguably, as what Miami has faced. Sorry, my phone just spazzed out on me there. Those are maybe not as signature wins as Miami has, but I understand Ohio State's the defending champion. They have played well. They knocked off number one Texas at the time. They went into Washington, tough place to go, and took care of business. They went into Illinois, who's ranked, and took care of business there. And I think Illinois should maybe still be ranked. Their only two losses are to the number one and number three team in the nation. Now they did get kind of blown out in those games, but I still feel like that they should be deserving of votes. They're at least getting votes. They're just outside the top 25. But Ohio State has looked really good. They're maybe the team to beat. Until someone beats them, they're maybe the team to beat. But them, Miami, Indiana, and A&M, as well as Alabama, have all looked phenomenal. Those are arguably the five best teams in the country. And it's really going to be interesting to see the last weeks of the season, see the conference championship games, and see what the playoff committee, who they select. But we've got a lot of games left, a lot of games within the SEC and Big Ten where teams are going to play other teams, and we're going to have some cannibalism. Ohio State still has to play Michigan, who's fallen out of the top 25, but is still getting votes. Maybe Michigan could get back into the playoff conversation. We will see on that. I think it's going to be really interesting the rest of the season. We're at the halfway point. It's going to be some tight and exciting next few weeks till the playoffs. I guess another team I should mention is Clemson, who's fallen out of the top 25. They are, let's see, where are they at? Clemson is, I don't know why I went to this. Clemson is 3-3 on the year. They're 2-2 overall. They did not get off to a good start, losing to LSU, losing at Georgia Tech, then losing at home against Syracuse. They did not get off to a good start and falling out of the top 25. Their season is likely over unless just a ton of chaos within their conference can take place in front of them to get them back into the ACC title game. But I just don't see that happening. There's too many good teams ahead of them in the ACC. But that is, I guess, the rankings. I went through them a little slow, but I'll give you a peek. This is ESPN, if it'll load. Okay, there we go. This is the top 25 here. Wish I had editing abilities. I could edit a graphic in to show you the rankings, but that is the rankings so far on the year. And you can see down at the bottom the teams that are getting votes that are not in. This is the AP ranking. But that is the rankings for college football at the moment. That's all I got for this video. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.